Yeah. Okay. So, um, so the context of this meeting is it's the healthcare group. I'm just checking actually on here. Kevin, obviously, you've got a lot of healthcare experience. That I was talking to Claire earlier this morning, so she was saying that you're taking an active role in that in the coming weeks.
Yes, I'm about to go back and take on a senior role within a large FM provider,
Yeah,
looking after their healthcare estates in the UK. So yes, I'm about to re-venture into the world of the NHS.
brilliant, good. Okay, Mark, where are you from, Mark Handy?
Hi. Yes, I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Ah,
Yeah.
so how have you come across us then? It's really interesting that you should be joining us. It's early
Um,
in the morning for you as well, isn't it?
it's early. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock here. Yeah.
Yeah.
6 a.m. Um, I I work for an international firm. We are developing some uh, digital twin uh, functionality. There, our team is out of India, and they referred me to this series of calls. I've focused on healthcare pretty much all my career, going on 40 years now.
Yeah.
And it's been I'm a licensed architect, but I've spent most of my time in backroom support and uh, working directly with clients after design projects are done to capture their space and infrastructure information. So
So
uh,
are you with TRC?
I am,
Ah,
yes,
right.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I actually
Ravi
now
Kiran,
understand the connection.
yep, yep,
Okay, well, thank you for joining us.
yeah. Happy to be
Uh,
here. Yeah,
yeah, we've got quite a community of people, not just looking at healthcare, but other types of projects as well. Um, Colin Newman, so where are you from? You remind me. I think I should know.
I run a consultancy, a fire consultancy that deals specifically with healthcare. I used to work at Department of Health. I was the fire safety policy lead at Department of Health for a few years before I
Brilliant,
set up my own consultancy.
fantastic, good. Okay, um, right. So the purpose of this group at the moment, what we're doing is we're trying to concentrate on digital handover. That's our main um, perspective within these groups, and we've actually got two other groups running in parallel with this. One's for education, so schools and universities, and another which we held yesterday was for residential. So this one, the perspective is healthcare, but there's a lot of commonality across all of those different areas because many of the organizations that are delivering projects for either healthcare or schools or resi. Resi is probably a little bit more specialist, but there's a lot of commonality there. And certainly things, Colin, like fire safety is common to all of them. So what we're hoping to do is through these sessions is to identify what's common and what's special, and then try and fill the gaps between them so that there's consistency through that process. Um, so this is the third of the healthcare meetings that we've held over the last um, month or so, and we'll be holding another one healthcare one in a couple of weeks' time. The National Hospital Programme, the UK's National Hospital Programme, that is, Mark, they are very interested in what we're doing here. And what we're trying to do is to provide a pragmatic set of information requirements that that can be delivered through the design and construction process that can then be picked up and used in operations. As part of that process, we're using the golden thread framework as being the a key part of that process. And for your benefit, Mark, construction and property in the UK now is a regulated industry. So it means that there's quite strict standards in terms of how information should be created, managed, and then maintained. The industry is still trying to get up to speed with what all of that means. And the result is that, there's some big gaps. So in some cases, people are doing a really great job, and in others, less so. So what we're trying to do here in this group, and also the others that we're operating, is to help define what good looks like and then feed that back up into the process so that people know what they are legally required to do and also operationally required to do. And to achieve that, we've deconstructed. We've been working. We've had probably several hundred people working on this over the last 3 or 4 years to create standards and standard information sets that actually form what the golden thread actually is as a set of requirements. And then also been working to say, how can we deliver against those? I've done a lot of talking there. Has anybody got any observations to make in terms of what I've just said? And no,
Can I
nobody's
just
volunteered?
one thing I was going to say, George, looking at the process so far, my own view is that it's quite unusual that you've got the golden thread, which is fundamentally a digital initiative, i.e. having a digital record of a building throughout its life. But we're also dealing with the reality of legacy information, which is far from digital. So you've got, the kind of stuff that we've been talking about on previous calls, i.e. how do you, more easily process the analog information, and then how do you store that in a way that enables you to manage it, which is slightly at odds with the aspirations of the golden thread, which is purely digital and very much automated. I don't know what your views are on that.
No, I think you've raised a really important point, actually, and that is that what we've determined when we started on the journey, the golden thread journey, right from the very start, what we agreed was that it needed to be digital, because that's actually in the definition.
Yeah.
But then there comes the question, what does that mean? Is a PDF of a document digital? Yeah. Now, clearly it is digital, but it's not what I would call digital, because it's not machine readable, or it's not something that is machine addressable. So that's the definition that we were trying to introduce. And Franco, for example, is an expert in taxonomies and classification and the like. What we've been trying to do is to encourage the use of standardized descriptions and standardized classification and the like. so that the information can be properly machine readable and glued together. So part of the process that we're very much trying to do is to do what you've just said there, Kevin. Because if you don't do that, it means any checking that's being done is completely manual.
And I
if
think
you're
that's my
reliant
point,
on-
George. If you don't, have that digital aspiration, i.e., you seek to automate everything as soon as you possibly can. I think everything's possible now, and you carry on with a kind of manual, human in the loop system where you've got loads of people processing paperwork and loads of paperwork being generated, which is being generated by a construction process that doesn't always understand the operational phase of buildings. Then you end up in something that's really not manageable. The financial cost of managing it manually, if you're doing it properly, is so great that people just don't do it. And then the minute you stop doing it, even for a couple of months, then you've lost all continuity. You've lost all of your golden thread. And I think that's the issue for me. I think we should always be aiming to try and look at, as I've called it, thin slicing the data that comes from construction and better informing the construction team as to the information required to manage the building, rather than all the rubbish that they generally present at the moment. And then the minute you get that information down to its bare minimum, then you can start to automate it and digitize it. Otherwise, you're trying to digitize, an awful lot of stuff that you don't really need to be too concerned about. It's kind of legacy data that isn't relevant to the operational phase. A lot of the construction material that you're getting on handover is not really operation and maintenance information. It's all sorts of manufacturers' brochures and drawings and tests that are done during the construction phase, which may or may not be important at some point later, but it's very much should be on file as legacy data. And you have to separate the legacy information, the stuff that you keep in a dead file somewhere, from the active information that's changing as the building goes through its life. And to me, that's we should always be aiming to go digital as much as we can, as soon as we can, and then it becomes something that's happening all the time in the background.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things that we want to do here is to provide the that perspective, because as you say, there's a huge amount of work gone in by people that have made a lot of effort into creating BIM data. But there's very little work, very little investment been made on the asset information side of things. And I think that's what we've got the expertise together to be able to help with. I've got people. I'm just looking around the names here, and it's it's a slightly smaller group than we've got tomorrow. For example, we've got a session on AI and data engineering. We've got 70 people signed up for that, but the quality of the people that are in this group, without being sycophantic, is very, very high. I mean, Mark's just talked about his background, but if I look at Dan O'Gorman, for example, Dan's got a lot of experience in asset information, and he works for GS1, which is the product identifier organization. We've got Bronwyn from Tetra Tech, and she's a specialist in asset information as well. So we've I'm just going around the table quickly because I think it is useful. We've got Martin Jorensen there. Martin, just tell us what you do.
Hi, so I'm MEP engineer who has basically developed into a BIM expert. I now work with my business partner in a company called BIMsync, and essentially what we do is all of the stuff that people in the MEP industry hate doing, which is essentially collecting all of the asset data and putting it into Revit models, and then obviously exporting that into various digital formats, which preferably are machine readable. So
then-
pretty much exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got, Mick Harrison, for example. Mick, can you just explain what you do?
Hang on, just turn the camera.
Yeah.
Morning, gents. So I'm been a hands-on engineer for the last 25 years, maintenance-wise. From everything from Olympus gas turbines, aerospace to hydraulics and everything like that. So I'm currently working with Matthew Cunliffe at Your Asset, looking into legacy estates and asset collection. I'm trying to bring out all the things that NHS, unis, and so forth that think they have, actually trying to put it digitally so they know what they've got and know how to maintain it.
Brilliant. Thank you. So out of the work that we've been doing, we're trying to put, as I mentioned earlier, more standardization and organization into things. And we've produced an analysis, a report, a white paper that describes what the golden thread actually is. Because one of the challenges that we've got is that a lot of the people that we within the golden thread group, and I'm considering many of you to already be in the golden thread group, or you are, what's needed to a great extent, and what we've got are people that can rely on each other. So that's trusted relationships, which is what we're trying to achieve here. But then the challenge is getting senior management to recognize the importance of it and to make available the funds to enable us to do the work, and also to prevent procurement, for example, breaking that process. So we are what we're trying to do at the moment is turn the technical and compliance side of things into something that's commercially beneficial to people, so that it gets on people's radars. So there's work that we've been doing, and I'll be happy to share with you what we've been doing if you're not already aware. I mean, some of you have already been contributing to it. We've produced a white paper that defines what the golden thread is, and commercially how it can save money and how it can de-risk things. So if you're interested in, we're looking for people to do peer reviews on this. So just put white paper in the chat if you would like a copy of that for you to look and maybe even use it. So if you put white paper in the chat, then we can send that through. A lot of you have already had them, but anyway. What we'd also like to do, sorry, Matt, carry on, please.
No, sorry, George, you carry on with your statement. It's more of a sort of general question to people on the kind of healthcare sort of side. Sorry. You want to finish your bit, I'll ask after.
No, carry on. Go
okay.
ahead.
No, I'm kind of interested to know people's engagement with the kind of strategic kind of placement of deploying a digital information strategy across the states from the kind of strategic kind of higher up sort of point. So I kind of find a lot of the time there's way too much talk on the top end of key decision makers at estates, especially in healthcare, rather than practically actually getting something done and being able to find out the lessons learned from that to feed back up, as if they're thinking too much almost, if you understand what I mean. Does anybody think that's a fair comparison?
I certainly think I agree with that, Matthew, that many people, in my experience within the states, certainly in the NHS, perhaps don't understand arguably how to manage an estate at all in some cases, certainly not how to do it effectively. And I think you only have to look at the backlog figures and the general attainment figures to demonstrate that. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the issues that George has alluded to, that if you calculate the cost of the golden thread and you talk to people about the cost of the golden thread or the cost of implementing a system to manage it, then it becomes an additional cost, because at the moment it's not being managed. And I think that's the problem. You're not saving money really, because it's not being done at the moment.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is adding costs to the equation, and people go, "We've got no money." So
Yeah.
so you've got to start to reframe the capital justification, the capex justification, in a different way, and emphasize the risks and the reason why the golden thread is in place, and how important it becomes. And also,
But it's almost, sorry, you have to do some practical bits to understand that value proposition is actually coming back rather than just constantly developing strategies.
Yeah, I think it's a much broader business proposal, really. It says, look, the return on investment over a 5-10 year period, and the risk factors of these, and writing that business case up as a complete corporate return on investment becomes very compelling. But you have to do it on a fairly high level basis. You can't really do it at the estate level, because the guys that are running estates are much more practical minded people. They just, if you approach them on a daily basis, say, I want to talk about strategy, they say, I'm too busy, fixing the hole in the roof at the moment.
Yeah, cool.
They're very much task orientated, very pragmatic people.
Yeah, so if I just show you what we've what we've produced here. So this is the paper, and if you're willing to, I mean, one of the interesting things that we've had from the surveys that we've done, 89% of senior directors don't seem to be aware of their duties under the new regulations, which is really amazing. And what we've done is broken down what the golden thread actually does. And we've sought to produce this into a form that, it's an opportunity to reduce risks, defects liability, I'm going to come on to in a minute. But also what we're doing at the moment, we've broken the activities that are involved in the golden thread. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. Into some sort of easier related activities with some benefits against them. And the next step, which we're working with Malta to do, and we've got Franco that's helping us with this as well, is looking at what the tasks are, because Malta is another software package, Mark, in the UK, but it's being used to produce task information delivery plans. So we're trying to bring together Malta. We're also working with Procore. I don't know if you know of Procore. They're a big American common data environment firm. So we're trying to have a number of software companies all working together. But the key thing is the knowledge that's in this room. For example, being able to say, okay, what tasks do we need to do to make sure that we're pulling together the information to form a digital twin, for example. So that's an exercise. Franco, would you like to say just a couple of words about that?
Yes. What we are working on in these days, because I've just come back from a very nice holiday, is to prepare presentation that explains what the advantages are in the collection of these tasks and how they will be enriched by some metadata that will allow us to make some analysis that will give us some indications of what the important tasks are, all the problems related to the various tasks. So if you are interested in participating to this exercise, I think the rule of the game is to put tasks in the chat, right? And in the next days, I need to talk to George and to Mohammed, the guy that has made Malta available. We will put together a presentation that hopefully will convince you that this is a win-win exercise, and there will be a benefit for everybody participating to it. And I just need some more days to produce a I don't know if it will be a presentation or a paper that explains the process and the advantages of belonging to this team.
Thank you, Franco. So essentially, you'll see there on the screen, we've got the high-level analysis that we've done, which looks at the financial relationship between doing the golden thread properly. And as Franco's saying there, what we need from you guys is your view of what tasks are needed to deliver those things. Because if we could do that, we end up with something that's far more auditable and useful. So if you're interested in contributing to the tasks, put as Franco said, put tasks in the chat. And if you've already done it already, don't worry, we'll pick that up. It doesn't matter that you ask for it twice. And if you want the white paper, as long as if I send it to you, that you'll actually take a little bit of time to just read it and come back with any comments. Just put white paper in the chat, and we'll get it to you. Okay, now there's a couple of things that we've also been doing that I'd like to share with you. The first is we've been doing audits over this last probably last 2 years really, but in a very focused way over the last 6 months on projects to identify what's missing. And because what we've identified, as Kevin was saying earlier, we've got information that may be in BIM models, but a lot of the information that's needed from an asset management point of view never gets put in BIM models because it's actually being provided by installers and specialist subcontractors who aren't directly involved in the BIM process. So the way they're delivering their information is in the form of schedules and documents, and it's what goes into the O&M. And what we've been finding with the reviews that we've been doing, which won't be a staggering surprise to anybody, is that the O&M information is all too often not complete. And in fact, actually, in many cases, it's not right either. So as-built information, which is what legally is required, isn't really being delivered. Now, what we've been doing is running methods of auditing that information and then reporting on it. And an aspect of that work, we've created some tools that can be used to automatically audit a set of O&Ms and identify what's missing. And by identifying what's missing, we're treating that as a defect, as a digital defect. And we've been told last week that that is something that's claimable under defects liability, which is a real game changer, because what it basically means is that you, Kevin, as an FM, if you have some works done by a contractor and you don't get good quality coordinated information back, then that's a defect that you can either put pressure on them to resolve, or it can be fixed and then recharged under the defects liability.
I would agree, George. What I would say as a caveat to that is that it's also depending on the information that you give the construction company at the outset. So if they've delivered what you've asked for, then it's not going to come under LAD really. It's about being specific in terms of what you want and when you want it. And I think that's the bit that's missing. It's the third-party contract packages are the things that are most problematic for me, where the work that the architect's doing to create the original BIM model is normally fairly good and has all the right information, all the right COBie data, all the right information in it. But it's really the shell of the building. And then when it comes to the MEP contractors, they're all, deployed under design and build. So it's really up to them how they fulfill the requirements of the building, the building temperature, the building conditions. So there's no specification from the construction company or the architect to say you must fit A and position B. It's very much down to the third party MEP contractor to design it. And they design it, in their own way, using their own CAD systems, but they don't feed it back into the BIM model. So the BIM model is just the shell of the building, and then all of the other package contracts are all sort of thrown into a pot in the project information model as a random series of CAD drawings, PDF files, documents of one sort or another. There's no sort of common link to bring them all together. Really, they certainly don't. They don't generate their bits of the BIM model that are missing.
No, I absolutely agree. And the part of the process, though, is that information, getting that information into, we've been trying for years to get that information to be put into BIM models. And to be frank, Kevin, it just isn't working.
Yeah, I agree. I think you'd have to say, George, that most even the larger construction companies are really still constructing in the way they've always done, using 2D CAD drawings and whatever design methods they use. And the BIM model is normally just produced as a kind of cosmetic thing at the start of the project to show off and say, look what we're doing. This is what the building's going to look like when it's finished. And it's a shame because the technology's there and I think the willingness is there to do it. And it's not as though it's more expensive to do. It's just that people have become so ingrained in doing it the way they've always done it, they're not really embracing the new methods of working.
Yeah, if I can just clarify, I'm not saying it can't be done, right? What I'm actually saying is that with some exceptions, and I can see Martin and Matthew have got their hands up over this, and I can imagine that they're going to understandably challenge what I'm saying. In practice, it isn't being done. Right? Certainly in many cases. And part of the reason for that is what I said earlier, which is procurement. Part of it is also looking at it from a very practical perspective as to what is the workflow that currently is in place. Because it may be that we're trying to do something that we need to elevate people's understanding of why it's important to do these things. So what we're trying to do, I can see Dan's had his hand up for a while as well. So I'm going to give way in a moment, but I want to make sure that the message is here that we're going to treat information that is missing from the O&Ms as a defect, that's missing from the health and safety file as a defect, right? Because at the moment, that is where a lot of the information that you, Kevin, actually need is being delivered. It's not being delivered in the BIM models, it's being delivered in the O&Ms. And that's something that isn't currently being scrutinized. So one of the things that we're doing tomorrow in the AI group is where we're going to be showing how we can take an O&M file and deconstruct it into the stuff that should have been provided in the first place. Now, by being able to do that retrospectively, it means that we can feed that back into the design and construction teams so they can see what good looks like. We've been having conversations about whether you need the information about the door closers on fire doors. The answer is, of course, you need the information on about door closers, because that's right, isn't it, Colin? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So I was reading an email that's just come through from me, and I've got straight after this.
I apologise. Right. So what I was just saying there is that the point about the golden thread is that the information needs to be there and fit for the purpose that somebody needs to do it. So, for example, it may be that somebody that's responsible for compliance doesn't need to know what the door closer is. They just need to know that it's a door set that's been tested and it's come from a particular source and they've got the right documentation, right?
Yeah.
But the people that are maintaining that door, that are looking after it and being able to replace it in 3 years' time, 5 years' time if it gets damaged, they need to know what that door closer is. They also need to know what the ironmongery set was.
Yeah.
Because
they also need
that's
to know that it's certified with that particular door.
exactly, yeah. So therefore, that level of information is actually needed by different people. So therefore, we need to be able to collect that. And often that's buried in the O&Ms. So if you're interested in that type of O&M analysis, if you put O&M in the chat, we can come back to you and show you what we're doing in that area. And also, we're going to be covering a fair bit of it tomorrow in the AI meeting. Just before I yield to you, Dan, I also want to get what my colleague Tim has been doing is looking at what information in a healthcare setting, this is, what regular problems are being reported through a help desk, because that's going to give us information, some core information about what should be being identified. So I'm giving you a bit of notice, Tim, for once. In about 5 minutes or so, I'm going to ask you to just show the results of that analysis work that you did on, was it about 13,000 help desk queries or something like that?
Yes.
Dan.
So
sorry.
George, thanks for the earlier words, but I'm a QS retired, but I've worked all over the world. And what I want to bring to everybody's attention is practical completion causes defects, after defects liability. But the biggest thing that's going to impact all clients, and I emphasize he who pays the piper calls the tune, is the introduction of ISO 9001 2026 DIS, which actually changes what we've traditionally done with ISO 9001, just looking at the system, to actually digital traceability, integrated data systems is the call out. So the auditors coming in to audit clients to ISO 9001 standards in the future, and I emphasize in the future, will not be just looking at the process that client has installed. They'll be looking for the evidence of that install, which comes back to what you said, George, is if the information is not there, it's not there, and therefore you fail the audit, i.e. going back to the door closer instance that you give. Can you actually show me the door closer that was approved? Can you actually show that an approved door closer was actually installed on the door over there? And if you can't, you fail the audit. That's a very serious implication. The other thing that's happening is ISO 19650 is actually changing as well this year, and they're more focused on the I in BIM, the I, which is the information element, which again is a major change and ties into what you're going to discuss tomorrow about AI, because AI has an Achilles heel, and that Achilles heel is information and data. And your warranty cannot be created by AI. It is a fact that that particular door enclosure was actually fitted on X date. So therefore, this information is becoming critical because clients will be using AI. FM technicians in the future, they'll not alone will be using AI, they'll be using agentic sourcing and agentic commerce. And that will actually highlight the efficiencies in the information flows that's coming from the design team and the contractors. So things are changing. Everybody in this call is aware of what's happening with ChatGPT and the impact of that. But that impact is actually going to equally apply to the AEC and particularly the FM sector, because everybody will be managing by exception rather than finish this off. Checkers, checking, checkers, checking, checkers, checking, checkers to no avail, which has been the cause of many unsightly disasters that have happened in the built environment space.
brilliant contribution. Thank you. That's a very interesting dimension. So what I'm going to, if anybody's interested in this this defects liability bit, I've produced a paper which I've been discussing it with an insurance specialist, and I think what I might do is send it to you first, Dan, because I'd be interested in you adding in what you've just said there on the 9001. It's not something I'd thought of, so that's another reason for doing it. Martin,
No problem,
you're
George.
next.
No problem.
Hi,
Martin?
thanks. Yeah, I thought I'd just weigh in a little bit on kind of the process of assembling some of this data for MEP engineers. To be honest, I used to work at MagiCAD, and in MagiCAD, you're actually designing within the Revit model that you're assembling all of the, the 3D model and all of the information within. And MagiCAD's approach to the devices that you put in, so all of the MEP equipment that you're placing into the model, is that they manage, if you're using their families, they manage the families and make sure that they're dimensionally accurate, etc., but also that all of the information is there. And the way that they do that is they hand that off to the manufacturers. So if it's a generic object, then they'll put generic data in. But if it is a specific component from a manufacturer, then it's actually the manufacturer who will provide MagiCAD with the data sheets, all of the dimensional information, and also it's their responsibility to keep that information up to date. So the whole idea behind using MagiCAD is to essentially, it was the golden thread before the golden thread was a thing. It was to have one container with all of the information within one place, essentially.
I think that's absolutely the vision of where we need to get to, but in practical terms, the installers may not install the equipment that was in that model.
Absolutely. And the other aspect to it as well is a lot of the time, and I mean a serious amount of the time, once the MEP design has been handed over to the contractor, a lot of contractors just essentially throw that design away and remodel it all themselves. And any information that you did include within the model then gets destroyed and replaced with potentially subpar information. So there's a bit of an issue with continuity that comes from people's practices, essentially.
Well, I think there's another dimension on that, Martin. So that's definitely, I think a lot of client organizations don't know that happens, but that definitely does happen. I would agree. But you've missed one little step out from the end. So you're quite right that you've got, as you were saying earlier, really good detailed coordinated design model. That then gets won by maybe a tier one M&E contractor who then produces their coordination model, which I agree normally means that the original design model doesn't get added to. It's a new model. But the bit that you've not mentioned is that the people that are actually doing the installation work are specialist subcontractors that are working for the tier one.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they are recording what they do just in schedules.
Yeah.
So we've got three steps here, and it's therefore no wonder that we don't actually get a record of what actually gets installed, because that information, that's why I think doing stuff, the sort of stuff that Tim can show you that we're doing on the schedules and the that side of things is going to be so important. Matt, can it be quite
Yeah.
quick?
I'll try. Yeah, I mean, it's pending onto this, and certainly on Kevin's point about how certainly MEP contractors going back to old school sort of CAD. I mean, we've taken 10 years to try and get people to adopt to things, and it's only when they start seeing the wins of doing fabrication, design for offsite, and all that sort of stuff that they start bringing it on. But our biggest issue, so one of the favorite expressions we have I run your CAD, my BIM outsourcing company. One of the favorite expressions we have is SOS, sorted on site. Because we know all that model will not get installed as we beautifully coordinated. They'll do things on site, but then I shudder to think what that digital construction model we produced at stage 6, with some fag packet markups coming back with some red pens, is actually valid to the geometrical installation or not. That is my biggest worry more than anything. The asset information, yes, is key, and keeping that golden thread going, and that's almost an extra thing, especially when you have principal contractors making IFC's complex data set deliveries, and having an MEP contractor having that knowledge set to deliver a decent IFC and Kobe file. But validation for that sort of offset handover, because if that's not right, the golden thread's already broken. This is the biggest sort of scare I have, frankly.
Yeah, and the when that's handed over. And normally there isn't a discrete handover, is there? You've got staged handovers for different work packages. But when that's finally ends up with with Kevin, for example, it's then got to be kept up to date. Yeah. So therefore, however that information is being handed over needs to be in a easily editable format by people that are carrying out small works. Otherwise, it immediately is going to be out of date. So the paper that I can share with you, if you're interested in this defects liability exercise, as I say, put defects liability into the chat, and I'll share with you what we're doing, and we're producing a version of this for a healthcare landlord, for a social landlord, an FM, for a main contractor, and for an insurance company. So we're doing this because, and also we've even done one for consultants like you, Colin. So there's ones in here. The purpose of this is to say that we can then say what are the benefits, and how will we go about doing it? How can we remediate information that's missing and reclaim it? Tim, can I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so almost a decade ago, we had more than a decade ago, we started provided a client with a program so that they could, or an application so that they could gather the ticket information and run it alongside their the service providers on about 40 healthcare centres. And these were arranged in different sizes, so we ended up with about 12 to just under 13,000 records. And one of the things we thought was, well, what are the common things? Well, all these issue tickets that were being raised obviously have some sort of value, as to say, well, what are the ones that are being raised the most, and what are the ones that are what's the criticality of it? So naturally, we just generated a spreadsheet from the database and then pushed that into an LLM, which is in this case it was ChatGPT, and then got it to do, just ran some questions on it. So it did some insights, and so these were the main columns up to here. So we gave it the company, the number of hours that they had to do the defect by, the severity and the class of the defect, the description. Sometimes they'd put a location in the building, and also then an additional comment. And one of the questions that I asked it to do was then check them against the regulations, the statutory regulations, and also the healthcare regulations, which are things like checking against HTMs, which are healthcare technical memorandums. And so it was able to then add those, what it thought was the relevant ones there. I also asked it to do a sort of sanity check on whether the severity given was actually relevant. Before I told it was healthcare buildings, and it said a lot of this is actually overdone. And then I said healthcare buildings, and then it changed the assessment. So we then asked it to do provide some insights so that we add them into the spreadsheet and provide the spreadsheet back. So this is what it did. And now what I've done is I've connected another LLM, in this particular instance, Claude, because that's what I'm using at the moment for coding and stuff, and asked it to do the same sort of thing. So within programs now, like Excel, and you can do it also, I think, in Google Sheets, you can just plug the AI in, and then you can ask it to do analysis. And what I've also done on another spreadsheet is, in this particular case, this spreadsheet here is what we'll be talking about tomorrow in the AI, about running it against a whole series of O&Ms. I actually got it to then do a summary of this of one of the sheets and give me another table. So the LLMs can actually, when they're running with the desktop locally like this, you can actually get you can get it to actually write to the spreadsheet that you're doing. I don't know whether a lot of these things you've got to have, paid subscriptions and things like that. So there are things. Sorry, George. What we've also done is looked at, well, this is all well and great if you're only using it to in a sort of you're insular, you're not sharing the spreadsheet in real time. So what we did was, because on Mortar, we put the same healthcare information up into Mortar as a table. And then there is a method of connecting an LLM to it, which in this case was Claude Desktop. And I'm just don't show the token. And what you can then do is connect to Mortar using what's called via an MCP server, which is, I won't go into the technical issues of it, and start to do the same sort of things, but you're working off the shared data. And the thing about that is that you're also then, with the Mortar MCP, you can actually add more data into it or change statuses of things like that. But that's where it all becomes a bit more very, very technical. But the important thing is that just get some analysis out of it.
Tim, the report that you showed me where it identified what was doors, what was water leaks. Have you got that handy?
Yeah, I've done that again, George. Yeah, but I've done this using Claude, so it gives out the same sort of thing. So here the question was, can you tell me how many help desk entries relate to problems with doors? So it tells you how it's thinking, and it tells you what it's looking up, and then it says roughly 18% of the tickets relate to doors, and then it gives you a summary of what those issues are. If we said right, okay, so how many issues relate to leaks? And we'll see what it can do, because obviously it's got to do some lateral thinking, because there won't necessarily be, if you're just doing this using a database, you can see what it's doing: leaking, leaks, water ingress, all sorts of things. So here it's found that there was water ingress through windows, pipes and plumbing leaks, ceiling leaks, and leaks around the door frames.
The important point about this is that what we're doing here is actually identify what is going wrong and how the information that is being provided or needs to be provided is going to ameliorate that. So
Yeah, this is the feedback loop, isn't it, George? As to saying when somebody's running buildings and they're managing buildings, this is going to tell you what's about what in that particular scenario, these scenarios, what are the important things for people doing on a day-to-day basis? Because
exactly.
this help desk ticketing system is reactive maintenance; it's not planned. So I don't just need to make the distinction there. But because invariably, whenever you ask for information about something from a contracting organisation, for people building it, why do you want it? And you just need to say, I mean, it's great if you could just say, because I asked for it, or because it's in the regulations. But
yeah, Tim. So what Tim said there hits the nail on the head. I hear all the time saying we only want the maintainable assets. Yeah. And that's because it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the majority of FM is about. Because there's basically three different types of information sets that are needed. One is stuff that's statutory and requires planned and regular maintenance, and that's the stuff that typically will go into a CAFM system. But then you've got, as Tim's showing here, reactive maintenance. Now, reactive maintenance does need a lot more elements, and in many cases, it's doors, it's leaks, it's M&E, and the third area is lifecycle replacement. So a lot of the things that are not modelled, or they may be modelled, but they're not being exported in COBE, is because they've not been asked for. And I think that's what Kevin was saying at the beginning. We need to improve the definition of what information we're asking for. So if you're interested in this area that Tim's been showing here, we want more examples of help desk. You can anonymize it, but if you could give us access to help desk information, then progressively we can use that, as a group to identify what's important and what isn't, and what's failing. So if you're interested in,
sorry, George, I think we
can.
Can I just? We can help and say, look, here's the fields that we used, and here's the way that you can check that you are not infringing GDPR, so that you can and you can ask the AI to actually anonymize the data, change the names of people or whatever if there are people's names in there, we can issue a how to provide the data, how to clean it up and make sure it's suitable for then handing over, so that nobody gets into trouble.
Good. Okay, so if you're interested in participating in this help desk thing, follow the protocol and just put help desk in the chat. Okay, we're now at time. We can have a few minutes of discussion if anybody has got any questions or things to raise. Franco.
Just a very, very quick one. Nothing new, but I wanted to underline this aspect related to the common language terminology and this kind of stuff. Just a simple consideration. The more international our work becomes, and the deeper the level of detail is, the more challenging the need to agree on a common language is. If you go if you go deeper into the details of a piece of asset, like a pump, right? If you want to describe things in a way that everybody understands, it becomes more and more complicated. This is one statement. The second one, very quick, is before you decide not to participate to the task collection exercise, please consider the fact that this exercise will lead to some really interesting results, especially the difficulties and the challenges that are related to those tasks. So I think honestly that it's a really interesting initiative that will lead to a great value for all of us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Franco. Dan.
I just put a note in there, Tim. That's a fantastic piece of information that you collated there using Claude. And this is what I was referring to earlier, that clients are going to get more educated because they will use systems like Claude, identify deficiencies in the information provided both by the contractors, but more importantly, they will identify the deficiencies that are not being addressed by the design and QS teams involved, that they have engaged to actually protect them from future prosecution under the Building Safety Act, or a failure in the ISO 9001-2026 audits. So, point I'm making is BIM is no longer about vectors and images. It's about information. The world is about information, because AI solutions, whether they're LLMs or agentic or AI solutions, they all depend on the accuracy of information, because their Achilles heel is hallucination, and that's information. If they don't have the information, they'll hallucinate, and then you've got a major problem, as we've seen in some instances recently. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So part of the project, the thing that we've got happening tomorrow, which is the AI group, to prevent or limit the risk of that hallucination, is that we need people that know what the answers need to be.
Exactly.
Because, and the approach that we've taken in terms of generating the tools that to automatically check and audit the O&Ms is that we did the audit first manually. So we spent 25 man days with experts going through the work packages, doing the manual analysis and identifying what the snags were. And because we knew what those were, that work was then fed into an LLM, and then we can test what comes out of the process on future jobs. So, and it's that circle of checking and then working it back again. Anna, I've just seen you pop onto the thing there. Are you there at the moment, Anna? And maybe she stepped away. Anna's from Scott Boundrig. She's the head of technical, or she's the technical director there.
Hello. Sorry,
Hi,
I just stepped away. I was listening, but I just stepped away from my desk. Could I? I wanted to comment on the principle of thinking of maintainable assets. I agree with you, George, but I think at the point of handover of the digital, let's say, digital asset to the client, you have to get them started on something. Yeah, does that make sense?
Of course.
And so focusing on maintainable assets at that point is actually really useful. They can then embellish the rest. So let's say maintainable and fire or safety critical assets. Yeah. So let's sort of package those two things together, because every time we work with a client to try and agree what is it that they need from us in terms of digital information, they are just so overwhelmed, and usually the people you're talking to are not the people who will be maintaining the building. If you have the FM team on board, then you're laughing, then you're having a lovely time. Yeah,
and that's what we're trying to do with this piece of work.
Exactly.
Anna, is looking at, from a practical point of view, what actually is going wrong. Yeah.
And what is the minimum you need to start with so that the client can then build upon that, if that makes sense. Yeah. And once you establish a very good baseline of maintainable assets and safety critical assets, the rest will, if they have a good FM team on board, the rest will be done by the FM team. You don't actually have to have absolutely everything in the O&M.
Okay, let me contradict you on that, if I may.
Go on,
Right?
go on.
Because if that information isn't being provided by the people that are doing the installation,
Yes.
yeah, how can the client do it retrospectively? How
Well,
can they go to?
I
Sorry.
see what you're saying, but no, sorry. Nowadays, most assets register where the information will be captured by the main contractor. Yeah, it's just that it might not necessarily be connected to either the model or anything physical or geometrical.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's got to be connected physically or geometrically. What I'm saying is that if the information, if the door schedules, for example, or the iMongery schedules are not in a form in the O&M handover,
yeah, readable, yeah,
that can be checked and used, then that's a defect. Yeah, and by the way, I've checked from our discussion on Monday, and a digital defect is a defect.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I've got that defined. I've got that.
If it's written in a contract, it has to be written in a contract.
No. It doesn't even need to be written in a contract, because it obviously that helps a lot. Yeah, but if it's a safety or a fire critical element, it's a defect. So
You mean for high risk? You mean for high risk? Okay, this is another. So let's separate these two things. I would really like to unpick this. Where is by which regulation? By BSA requirements? What specifies digital inefficiency as a defect? I'm not disagreeing with you. I want to just know what we're like. Where does this come from?
Okay, we'll explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, can we? I'll explore as well. I'm really interested.
I'd be very interested as well, George.
Yeah,
as a whole group across the whole BIM status, I think it's very important, because we can really use this to drive information. It would give us so much more. So much more support to be able to insist on things to happen.
Yeah, and
I'm not quite sure. Unless it goes into the contract, I'm not sure that there is an enforceable regulation that specifies that yet. But we should be working towards that. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I absolutely agree that it should go into the contract, and it should be specified properly at the outset. And that's obviously that. But to be frank, even the stuff that's going into the contract isn't being complied with in many cases. So
often, yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I've just put into the chat what I was going to say, actually, is that we're now in a position, because we have digital AIRs, is to actually say, did we ask for such and such? And if we did ask for it, who's delivering it? Has it been delivered? And is it in the right format? And that will be a question about, instead of sending that to a person to then, oh, I don't know, it'll be a system that will be just turning around and going, right, well, I'm an agent, I'll find out, I'll come back with the answer, and I'll send you an email. That is how far we have actually started to go now. And all it needs is for everybody to hang their hats on these defined schemas, so that everybody's singing off the same schema set data set. Doesn't matter what systems that you're actually well, it does matter what systems. The systems have to be accessible, but we're getting to a position where this is just so exciting. It's so exciting, the potential of it all. It just needs people to embrace it from a point of view that it's going to make their lives easier. I mean, we got a question, was it in an email, somebody saying, well, have we got the positions of these fire dampers? And yes, we did, but why couldn't we just pass that to the system first? And if it couldn't answer it then passes it to a person. It goes, yeah, we've got the locations, they're on these floors, and this is how many there are. But what we don't have is this, because I know on that particular project they didn't put the tag numbers on. But there you go. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank everyone. Really good.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you
very much.
Have a nice day.